On the news tonight, former Ekiti State Governor Ayo Fayose shares documents claiming Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde received 50 billion naira from federal government over Ibadan explosion tragedy. Serap files lawsuit against state governors and FCT minister over their alleged failure to account for the spending of about 14 billion naira released as fuel subsidy savings. President Bola Tinubu departs Lagos for Europe ahead of his official visit to Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. On the foreign scene, first of three phases of voting ends in Myanmar's widely dismissed election. Good evening, this is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Opayamuni. Former Ekiti State Governor Ayo Fayose has shared documents it says prove the Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde received 50 billion naira from the federal government led by President Bola Tinubu. According to Mr. Fayose, the money was approved as emergency support after the deadly explosion that occurred in Ibadan in January 2024. Governor Makinde had earlier denied the accusation and challenged Mr. Fayose to provide proof. In response, the former Ekiti State Governor, Ayo Fayose, released the documents and claimed that only 4.5 billion naira from the funds was given to people affected by the explosion. He alleged that the remaining money was used to support Governor Makinde's alleged plan to run for president. In a statement he signed himself, Mr. Fayose said he made the documents public so Nigerians could decide for themselves whether the Oyo State government had been truthful. He also dared Governor Makinde to take legal action against him, while insisting that there are records showing that other financial support sent to Oyo State by Tinubu administration was never disclosed to the public. Additionally, Mr. Fayose claimed he has documents revealing the true internally generated revenue of Oyo State, which is said is different from what Governor Makinde has publicly stated. Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has said the 600 billion naira left in the Rivers State coffers after the lifting of emergency rule in the state is attracting political interest. Mr. Wike said this when he met with members of the Rivers State House of Assembly at the legislative quarters in Port Harcourt. Speaker of the State House of Assembly, Martin Amawule, during one of the sittings, said that the immediate past administrator of the state, Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, left 600 billion naira in the state coffers following the lifting of the emergency rule imposed by President Bola Tinubu on September 18. A week later, Governor Siminalayi Fubara, while speaking at the project inauguration, affirmed the speaker's claim, stating that he left 300 billion naira in the treasury following a suspension by the president on March 18 and met 600 billion naira on resumption of office on September 18. While reacting to the situation, the FCT minister made a veiled reference to some prominent politicians who recently visited the state and met with its successor. Mr. Wike said during their visit, the politicians showered praises on the governor, who recently dumped the People's Democratic Party for the All Progressives Congress, noting that all they were after was the 600 billion naira in the state coffers. It will be recalled that the National Security Advisor, Nur Ribadu, had led a federal government delegation comprising the Minister of Works, David Umai, and the Minister of Environment, Balara Bin Lawal, to visit Governor Fubara last week, where they conveyed President Bola Tinubu's message that he was happy with the governor. A Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAB, has filed a lawsuit against the 35 state governors and the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, over the alleged failure to account for the spending of about 14 trillion naira realized as fuel subsidy savings. Other respondents include the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. The RAP said the governors and the FCT minister have collected trillions of naira as increased allocations from the Federation account allocation committee following the removal of fuel subsidy in May 2023, but that the funds have not translated into improved access to quality health care, education, and other basic services for poor and vulnerable Nigerians. According to a statement by SERAP's Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadare. The suit was filed last Friday at the Federal High Court in Lagos. Elsewhere, Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Bayo Julari, today assured Nigerians that ongoing price competition in the downstream petroleum sector will ultimately benefit consumers. Addressing journalists after briefing President Bola Tinubu in Lagos, he described current market tensions as a natural consequence of Nigeria's transition from total import dependence to domestic refining. The NNPCL boss made remarks against the backdrop of an intense price war that has seen petrol prices crash from over 1,200 naira per litre in November 2024 to as low as 739 naira per litre at some retail outlets in December 2025, driven primarily by competition between Dangote Refinery, NNPCL, and independent marketers. Clarifying NNPCL's role in the deregulated market, Mr. Julari emphasized that the company is no longer responsible for petroleum product pricing or regulation under the Petroleum Industry Act. He stressed that NNPC has been instituted by the PIA to become a commercial company, which means a company that needs to compete profitably and be successful profitably. Mr. Julari disclosed that NNPCL no longer receives federation allocation and must raise finance independently like any other business.
First thing you have to know that the PIA did something fundamental, right? If before the PIA in 2021, that was rolled out in 2022, everything was under NNPC, including some regulations, right? The PIA divided the roles of regulation from what I would call the business, right? The NMDPRA is responsible for all downstream regulation and midstream, as you know, and the NUPRC is responsible for all upstream regulations. So it's very important that Nigerians understand that post-PIA, we as NNPC, we are not regulators. NNPC has been instituted by PIA to become a karma company, which means a company that needs to compete profitably and be successful profitably, right? Remember also that we no longer get any federation allocations. We have to raise finance ourselves like any other business, and by so doing be able to generate additional production. So for us as NNPC, our focus is to generate more production. As we generate more production, we believe there'll be more production to feed up the refineries as much as possible. We also believe the additional production will create more flexibility in terms of ability for downstream players to be able to participate effectively. For us, as a supplier of last resort, we are working very closely with all the key players in the downstream, as well as Dangote, who is for which we have an interest as well, to ensure that we ensure there is product availability to Nigerians. Right, that is the most important thing. And if you look at it, so far so good. Throughout all these supplies, that has been going very, very well. We let the NMDPRA manage the issue of competitiveness. Competitiveness is not easy. And I think it's these early stages, we are seeing a lot of tension with the willing buyer, willing market. At the end of the day, I can tell you that Nigerians on the street are going to be the beneficiaries. Where there is a healthy competition, the buyers are the ultimate beneficiaries. And I think for us, we need to keep our mind. But the market will stabilize after a while. There'll be some tension because we're going through a major transition. And to be honest with you, by the time you have a refinery like a Dangote in country, which has not been there before, with NNPC refinery now under a major, a relook, such a huge refinery in the country, you can expect the market will be impacted.
President Bola Tinubu today departed Lagos for Europe as part of his end-of-the-year break ahead of his official visit to Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. The president is scheduled to participate in the 2026 edition of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week Summit, following an invitation from the President of United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The summit is expected to hold in early January, according to a statement issued by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga. The week-long event brings together leaders from government, business, and civil society to advance global conversations on sustainable development. President Tinubu is expected to return to Nigeria after the summit. The president's trip comes days after he arrived in Lagos to spend the end-of-year holidays following official visits to Borno and Bauchi states. In Abia State, Governor Alex Oti is confident of his re-election, saying the 2027 election will be smoother for him than previous outings. Speaking at the 2025 Aro Day event held in Arochukwu local government area of the state, Governor Oti said he's not afraid of the 2027 polls, as his administration's achievements since taking charge of Abia State will give him a smoother ride. The governor said that he would not be selling promises to the people, but would only leverage what they are already seeing with their own eyes. Governor Oti emphasized that many people are already causing themselves stress over the 2027 polls, even though the election year is still far off. In his remarks, the Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi II, commended Governor Oti's achievements, saying that even outside Abia and Nigeria, people have taken note of a great transformation of the last 2 years of its administration. To security matters, the Nigerian Army says its troops of the Joint Task Force Parurua rescued a kidnapped victim after a successful security operation along the Kano-Katsina border in the early hours of today. The Nigerian Army Public Relations Officer, 3 Brigade Kano, Major Zubair Babatunde, stated that the operation occurred following credible tip-off received at about 1 a.m. on the movement of armed bandits from the Urawa and Kida areas of Katsina State towards the Kano axis. He maintained that the troops operating from the forward operating base, Yankwada, swiftly mobilized a fighting patrol to the fringe of the Kano-Katsina border to intercept the suspected bandits. According to him, during the encounter, one kidnapped victim, identified as Rabiu Alilu, aged 38, was rescued by the troops. Major Babatunde disclosed that Alilu sustained a gunshot wound on his leg during captivity and was promptly evacuated to the JTF Parurua Medical Center, where he is receiving treatment. According to him, items recovered during the operation included 3 motorcycles abandoned by the fleeing bandits, as well as an undisclosed number of cattle believed to have been stolen. Zamfara State Police Command says it has, in a combined operation with other security agencies, repelled attempted invasion of Maru Metropolis by armed bandits who planned a mass abduction in the early hours of Sunday. The command's public relations officer, DSP Yazid Abubakar, made this known in a statement on Sunday. He said a joint security team comprising the police, military, community protection guards, and vigilante groups swiftly engaged the attackers, forcing them to retreat with suspected gunshot injuries. DSP Abubakar said security has since been reinforced in Maru and the surrounding areas. In Kwara State, Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak has declared that terrorists and kidnappers no longer have any safe place to operate in the state, following the deployment of forest guards across key areas. The governor spoke in Ilorin at the passing out ceremony of more than 1,000 forest guards who have completed their training and are set to begin full operations. The guards will help tackle terrorism, kidnapping, illegal mining, and other crimes, especially in forested areas. Governor Abdulrazak praised existing security agencies for their efforts and said the addition of the forest guards who are recruited from local communities will strengthen security in the state. He explained that the deployment shows the government's decision to move from defense to active action against criminals. Moving on, Nigeria's 2025 economic outlook projection includes a moderate gross domestic product GDP growth of about 3.9 to 4.2%, according to the IMF World Bank. This projected growth was to be driven by oil sector recovery, ongoing reforms, and improved investor confidence. However, headline and food inflation, insecurity, and energy sector issues proved to be challenges to economic stability and improved livelihoods for Nigerians. Daniel Odeyemi takes a panoramic view of the Nigerian economy in 2025.
2025 was a defining year for Nigeria's economy, a year marked by reforms, resistance, and rising questions. From fuel subsidy aftershocks to tax changes, currency instability, and mounting debt, economic issues dominated public discourse. But perhaps the most controversial development was the overlap of national budgets, an issue that continues to cast a long shadow over fiscal planning. Traditionally, Nigeria's budget cycle runs from January to December, but in 2025, delays in implementation meant that parts of the 2024 and 2025 budgets ran at the same time. Budget historian Professor Tunji Ogunyemi of the Obafemi Awolowo University Ile-Ife expressed displeasure over the development, calling on the Budget Office to live up to its responsibility.
What is actually true is that last year's budget is extended, will be extended has been extended to this year, up to December. And this year's budget will be extended till March of next year. So where do you begin to talk of the marking point? Because all budgets must necessarily have expiry dates. And the expiry date of the Nigerian budget is written clearly in the Finance Act of 1980, which defines Nigeria's financial year as a period of 12 months, starting from January 1. So if you now have a term in which it extends one budget, not just from January 1 to December, but to the December of the following year, and then how do you begin to compare the figures between that year and the previous year, when the previous year's budget is extended to the end of this year? So to me, I'm pissed off. I think it's a cacophony of crisis with the Budget Office of the Federation. On this one, they have not got it right at all.
When two budgets overlap, which one takes priority? How do oversight institutions track spending effectively? And how confident can citizens be about fiscal discipline? While supporters of this approach conclude it prevented the abandonment of critical projects, critics like Professor Tunji Ogunyemi, however, argue it weakened oversight, blurred accountability, and made it difficult to measure performance.
Every budget is measured by the power of its revenue projections. No budget is a budget, except it is tempered with revenue projections. And the revenue projections must be based upon parameters that are real, realistic, and reasonable, not unreasonable. For example, if a barrel of oil sells for $60 per barrel, and you go base your budget on $65 per barrel, that's financial rudeness. And it is one of the ways by which you can derail the financial trajectory of a country by overstating your revenue. I think our budget for this year was grossly overstated in terms of revenue, to the extent that the shortfall in our revenue is about 30 trillion naira. I mean, the finance minister confessed as much when he said that the shortfall, that our projections to hand revenue this year is 40 trillion naira, and that we plan to borrow 10 trillion. To make the budget approximately 50 trillion. Now, we now have a revenue shortfall of about 30 trillion. Based essentially on misprojection, on wrong projection, of wrong parameters, on baseline assumptions that are just absolutely pedestrian. I mean, for want of a better word. How could you be so wrong that 3/4 of your budgetary projections for revenue, fall short? 3/4? I mean, we could tolerate 20%, a maximum 25%, but not 3/4 of the budget revenue expectations not collected. As at November of a year, come on, we can do better.
Economic concerns are not abstract for Nigerians. They felt the economic challenges daily. Food prices soared while transportation costs climbed, and the naira continued to face pressure despite policy interventions. Inflation remained high almost through the year until November, when the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) revealed that Nigeria's headline inflation rate fell significantly to 14.45% from the 16.05% recorded in October. This development brings some relief that the federal government is on top of the situation. However, for many households, economic growth figures did not translate into improved living conditions. All of these now feed into debates surrounding the 2026 federal budget, one of the largest in Nigeria's history. The budget is built on ambitious revenue projections, expanded borrowing, and a heavy debt servicing burden. Analysts note that a significant portion of government revenue is already committed to servicing existing debts. That reality raises critical questions. How much is left for education, healthcare, infrastructure, and job creation? Can revenue targets be achieved without increasing the burden on citizens and businesses? And how will capital projects survive the realities of media budget adjustments? Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, however, believes that the new tax regime starting in 2026 will shore up revenue.
Yeah, I think the president also alluded to that in his speech, that the new tax regime that we will be, adopting next year is likely to impact positively on revenue. I think what was said and all these budget projections were anchored partly on the expectation that the new tax regime will improve on the revenue performance. Secondly, the president also said that there is going to be better commitment to oil output, to ensure that because we have much better control over output than the price. So if you are able to do more with that, that will also impact positively on revenue. Then he was also very emphatic, and again, I come back to these revenue generating agencies, because it's one of the biggest challenges that we have been grappling with, for a couple of years now. Because you have some agencies of government, they are so rich and all of that, they are flush with a lot of money and all of that. And most times, they spend practically everything that they generate. Now, what the president said in his speech is that there's going to be a lot more discipline around that to ensure that all these revenue agencies actually remit what they should remit. So whatever has been projected, I think, is anchored on those revenue expectations. So that is what I think is driving that optimism. But in all of this, again, I admit we need to manage expectations.
Government officials describe the 2026 budget as a necessary reset, a bridge towards long-term stability. But economists caution that stability cannot rest on optimism alone. As Nigeria transitions from 2025 into 2026, the economic debate is no longer just about figures on paper. It is about credibility. It is about discipline. And ultimately, it is about whether economic policies improve the daily lives of ordinary Nigerians. Daniel Odeyemi, Western Spring Television News.
Still to come, NDLEA arrests 37-year-old ex-convict and 3 cargo agents in connection with attempted export of cocaine concealed in liquid starch sachets. To bring you more on this, we'll return.